My cheating wife who left me 5 years ago is now apologizing because she has no life left, but karma will not forgive her for this. I've been living in this big house outside the city for a while now. It's quiet out here, just the way I like it. Got a decent setup, big windows, a porch where I can sit and think, and enough space to keep my mind off the past. But it wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, my life was a mess. I was in a different place, both physically and mentally. Back then, I was married, had a smaller house closer to town, and thought I had a partner who'd stick by me. Turns out, I was wrong about that last part. It all started with the accident. I was driving home from work one night, nothing unusual, just the regular grind. Then some guy ran a red light and smashed into me. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, with doctors telling me I'm lucky to be alive. Lucky didn't feel like the right word. The crash left me partially paralyzed, my legs wouldn't move, and my arms were weak. They said I'd need months of rehab just to have a shot at walking again. My whole world flipped upside down in a second. My wife, well, ex-wife now, was there at the hospital when I came to. I remember her standing by the bed, arms crossed, looking at me like I'd done something wrong. She didn't say much at first, just stared. I was too out of it to process her reaction. The pain meds had me foggy, and all I could think about was how I was going to get through this. I figured she'd be upset, sure, but I thought she'd be there for me. We'd been together for years, high school sweethearts, married right after graduation. I assumed she'd step up. That's what you do when you love someone, right? A few days later, she finally let loose. I was still in the hospital, stuck in that stiff bed with the scratchy sheets. She came in after work, sat down, and started talking. She said I'd been irresponsible, that I should have been more careful driving. She went on about how this was going to ruin her life, how she'd have to take care of me now, how I wouldn't be able to work, how the money would dry up. I just lay there, listening, too tired to argue. I wanted to tell her it wasn't my fault, that I didn't ask for this, but she wasn't hearing it. She was pissed, and I was the punching bag. The doctors had me on a rehab plan by then. They wheeled me out of the hospital after a couple weeks and sent me home. Home was where it got worse. I couldn't do much, couldn't get out of bed without help, couldn't even make myself a sandwich. She had to do everything, and she hated it. I could see it in her face every time she brought me a glass of water or helped me into the wheelchair. Her jaw would clench, and she'd avoid looking at me. I started feeling like a burden, which was the last thing I wanted. But she didn't leave right away. There were insurance payments coming in from the accident, decent checks to cover medical bills and keep us afloat. That's what kept her around, I think. The money. Once I was back home, things got worse quickly. Rehab took up most of my day. Therapists made me work on moving my legs and arms, which was exhausting. I came home tired every time, needing rest. She didn't care. She left the house a lot. I heard the door close when she went out, and she stayed gone for hours. At night, she often came back drunk. I smelled alcohol on her and saw her stumble over things in the house. I stayed in bed, unable to move much, listening to her make noise. I couldn't stop her. My legs didn't work, and my arms were weak. She knew I couldn't do anything. Insurance money came in every month. She used it to pay bills, then spent the rest on herself. New clothes appeared in her closet. She got her nails done often. One day, I found a receipt for an expensive dinner with 2 meals and drinks. I didn't eat that food. She enjoyed herself while I stayed stuck. I asked her once where she went. It didn't go well. She came home sober that day, and I spoke up. She yelled at me. She said I wanted to control her, and couldn't tell her what to do since I was stuck in bed. She called me pathetic, and said I made her a servant. I didn't argue back. I was too tired. She left again after that. I realized she didn't love me. The accident showed me who she really was. Her drinking increased. She came home late, tripping over things, waking me up. I didn't like it. The alcohol smell and her loud voice bothered me. I stayed awake, thinking about who she was with and what she did. I couldn't ask her. When I tried, she said I was paranoid and didn't trust her. She was right. I didn't trust her anymore. I noticed more changes. Her phone stayed silent. She took calls outside and spoke quietly. One night, I saw her texting someone and smiling at her phone. She hadn't smiled at me like that in a long time. I knew she was cheating. I had no proof, just a feeling. I was stuck in the house, watching her act like I didn't matter, and I couldn't do anything about it. The days dragged on like that for months. I went to rehab every morning, worked hard to get my strength back, and came home to a house that felt empty even when she was there. My legs started to move a little, small twitches at first, then enough to shift them in bed. The therapist said it was progress, that I might walk again if I kept at it. I focused on that. It was the only thing keeping me going. She didn't notice or didn't care. She kept leaving, coming back drunk, living her life like I was just a piece of furniture. I stopped trying to talk to her about it. Every time I opened my mouth, she turned it into a fight and left. I didn't have the energy for that anymore. My friends started coming by more often, guys I'd known since high school. They saw what was happening. They'd sit with me, bring me food, tell me I deserved better. I agreed, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was still stuck in that bed most of the time, relying on her for the basics. The insurance money kept her around, and she wasn't going anywhere while it was still coming in. One night I hit my limit. She came home wasted again, laughing too loud, knocking over a lamp in the living room. I heard the crash and something snapped in me. I didn't want her there anymore. I couldn't kick her out myself, couldn't even stand up yet, but I had to do something. The next day, I called my friends. I told them everything, the drinking, the cheating, the way she treated me. They didn't hesitate. They said they'd help me get her out of my life. I asked them to take me to her while she was at work. I wanted to see what she was really up to. They showed up that afternoon with a van. 2 of them lifted me into the wheelchair, loaded me up, and drove me to her job. She worked at a bar downtown, started there a few months after the accident. We parked outside, and I waited. When she came out on her break, I saw her with some guy. He was tall, scruffy, wearing a leather jacket. She hugged him, kissed him, right there in the parking lot. My friends looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I just nodded. I'd seen enough. She didn't know I was there. When she went back inside, my friends drove me home. I told them I was done. They said they'd handle it, talk to her, get her to leave. I didn't care how they did it. That night, she came home and started packing. My friends must have called her, told her I knew. She didn't say a word to me, just grabbed her stuff and left. I heard the door slam one last time. She was gone, and I wasn't sorry. After she left, I focused on rehab. My friends helped me get around and brought food. The therapists worked with me every day. My legs got stronger, and I started using a walker then crutches. The insurance money paid for rehab and bills. I didn't hear from her at all. I didn't care. Months later, I walked without crutches. My friends celebrated with me that night. I got a remote job that paid enough. I sold the old house and moved to a bigger one outside the city. I set it up for myself and started over. I drove again using a truck. 5 years passed. I didn't think about her much. Then one day, she showed up at my new house. I was in the kitchen when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there she was, my ex-wife, standing on my porch. 5 years had passed since she left, and now she was back. She looked worn out, thin, with tired eyes. I didn't expect her to show up. She started talking fast. She said she was sorry for everything. She asked me to forgive her and let her come back. She told me her life was a mess. She had no job, no money, and nowhere to stay. She said she'd been wrong to leave me after the accident, that she regretted it. She kept going, saying she missed me and wanted another chance. I stood there silent, watching her. She asked again to come inside, to start over. I didn't answer yet. She stood on my porch, waiting for me to say something. I told her no. She blinked, surprised, then started arguing. She said I couldn't turn her away, that we'd been married, that I owed her something. I stepped forward and told her she didn't get to decide what I owed. My voice was loud, louder than I expected. She took a step back but kept talking. She said she'd changed, that she wasn't the same person who left me. I didn't believe her. I told her exactly what I thought. I said she cheated on me while I was paralyzed, that she came home drunk every night, that she left me when I needed her most. She tried to interrupt, saying it wasn't like that, but I didn't let her. I kept going. I told her how I'd lain in bed, unable to move, listening to her stumble around with no care for me. I told her how my friends had to drag me out to catch her with that guy. I said she only stayed for the insurance money, not for me. She got quiet for a second, then said I was being unfair. She claimed she'd been scared back then, that the accident messed her up too. I shook my head. I told her she didn't look scared when she was kissing that guy in the parking lot. Her face went red. She yelled that I didn't understand, that I was cruel to bring it up. I didn't back down. I said she was the cruel one, leaving me like I was nothing. Inside, it was hard. My chest felt tight, and my hands shook. I'd kept all this locked up for 5 years. Every night she ignored me, every time she walked out, every insult she threw. I'd worked so hard to get my life back, to walk again, to not need her. Seeing her now brought it all up again. I remembered the pain of rehab, the loneliness after she left, the way I'd hated myself for being weak. I'd saved it all for this moment, even if I didn't know it. She didn't get how much she'd hurt me. She never would. She kept arguing, but I was done. I told her to leave. She stared at me, tears in her eyes, but I didn't care. I pointed to the road and said she wasn't welcome here. My voice cracked, but I meant it. This was my house, my life. She didn't belong in it anymore. She stood there on the porch, tears running down her face, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She wiped her eyes and tried one last time. She said she had no one else, that I was her only hope. I didn't respond. I'd heard enough. I turned around, went back inside, and started closing the door. She grabbed the edge, pleading for me to listen. I pulled it shut anyway. The lock clicked, and I heard her bang on the wood a few times. Her voice came through, muffled, saying she'd wait until I changed my mind. I walked away from the door. My legs felt steady, stronger than they'd been in years. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and sat down. She kept knocking for a while, then it stopped. I didn't check to see if she was still there. I didn't care. The house was quiet again. I sat at the table, thinking about what just happened. She was gone, for real this time. I didn't owe her anything. Not after what she did. I remembered how she'd packed her bags 5 years ago, how she didn't even look back. Now she wanted forgiveness because her life fell apart. It wasn't my problem. I got up and looked out the window. Her car was still in the driveway. She was sitting inside it, head down. Part of me wondered how long she'd stay there. The rest of me didn't care. I'd spent years rebuilding myself. Rehab, new house, new job. She didn't get to walk in and undo that. I turned away from the window and went back to my day. Hours passed. When I checked again, her car was gone. She'd left, just like before. Only this time, I was the one who made her go. It felt right. The next day, everything went back to normal. I woke up, made coffee, and worked on my computer. No knocks on the door, no surprises. I kept expecting her to show up again, but she didn't. I checked the driveway a few times, empty. She was really gone. I didn't feel bad about it. I'd given her a chance years ago, and she threw it away. This time, I protected myself. I called one of my friends that afternoon. Told him what happened. He said I did the right thing, that she didn't deserve me back then and sure as hell didn't now. He asked if I was okay. I said yeah. I meant it. The anger from yesterday was still there, but it wasn't eating at me. It was just fuel to keep her out of my life. Work kept me busy the rest of the week. I had deadlines to meet, emails to answer. It was a good distraction. I didn't think about her much. When I did, it was just flashes, the accident, her leaving, her begging on my porch. I pushed it aside every time. I had better things to focus on. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was her. She said she was sorry again, that she wouldn't bother me anymore. She asked if I could send her some money, just to get by. I read it, then deleted it. I didn't reply. She wasn't my responsibility. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. By the end of the week, I felt lighter. The house was mine again, no trace of her. I walked around, checked every room, made sure nothing reminded me of her visit. It was over. 5 years ago, she left me broken. Now I was whole, and she was the one with nothing. It's been a month since she showed up at my door. Life's gone on like it always has. I wake up, work, eat, sleep, same routine. She hasn't come back. No more texts, no calls, nothing. I don't know where she is or what she's doing. I don't care. She's out of my world for good this time. I made sure of that. Looking back, the accident changed everything. It took my legs for a while, but it also showed me who she really was. She couldn't handle me at my worst, didn't even try. She cheated, left, and only came back when she had nothing left. I spent years rebuilding myself. Rehab got me walking again. Friends got me through the dark days. I got this house, this job, this life. She didn't help with any of it. When she stood on my porch begging, I saw it clear. She wasn't sorry for what she did, just sorry it didn't work out for her. I threw her out because I had to. Not out of hate, but because I'm done carrying her mess. 5 years ago, She walked away like I was nothing. Now she's the one with nothing, and I'm still standing. Karma hit her hard. No job, no money, no one to lean on. She thought I'd be her safety net after all she did. She was wrong. I don't forgive her. I don't have to. She made her bed back then, drunk nights, that guy from the bar, leaving me paralyzed and alone. Now she's lying in it. I've got my life back, and she's not part of it. That's how it ends.